SolidWorks. Okay, welcome everyone. It is September 11th, 2020, 12:51 p.m. I'm creating a new video for the Extruded Cube in SolidWorks, the 2018-2019 build. My earlier one, the Extruded cut cube video, has a volume issue where my voice is a little bit too quiet. So I'm reattempting this video in hopes that you can hear me speak. This is going to augment a lesson that I'm going to provide in class. However, I'm going to be going faster than you're going to want to follow, so that you can use this video to play back and watch at your own pace to start the basics. So we're going to start off with the way that you would normally see SolidWorks in the classroom. It's going to be the interface that you see up here on the screen. And you're going to click over here at File, New, and you're going to select Part, which is one of the three things that we'll be focusing on this year, but specifically this video we're going to be just on a part. Once it loads, a couple things that I'm going to want that you notice is that there are tabs here that you can cycle through. We're going to focus on Feature and Sketch tab at this point. And I think by default it stays to Features. Philosophically, you can look at this two ways. You can ask for a three-dimensional feature to be made, and then SolidWorks will ask you for two-dimensional sketch geometry prior to, and then ask you for the third dimension for extrusion. Or you could give it the two-dimensional information first and then apply a three-dimensional feature to the two-dimensional sketch. If this is your first time hearing things like this, I can imagine it would be a little bit confusing. I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about the philosophy of which way to go, one way or the other, or best practice. So I would say at this point what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Extrude Boss base using Features. And SolidWorks is going to prompt you to go throughout the process. So if you can take a look over here on the yellow where my mouse is circling, it says select a planar surface or a plane to create the sketch on. So I want you to visualize the top plane is like looking down at your desk. The right plane is looking at the right side of your desk or the right surface. And then the front, obviously, is looking at the front surface facing, let's say, your chest at the desk if you're sitting at a table. This is important to understand because if you create your base feature with a misunderstanding of what plane that you started with, at the end of your model, whatever it is that you eventually will create, if the model is something that actually has a defined front, let's pick something simple, a rectangular DVD case. With its spine on the left, it opens like a book on the right, and the front is facing you. If you selected the incorrect plane and you were to create a drawing after the model was created, the model may look correct, but as SolidWorks perceives the model, it may put the bottom of the DVD case in the front view when we talk about orthographics. So you'll experience these things firsthand when you make mistakes, and it's expected. So for today, we are going to click the top plane. We're going to look down at the two-dimensional planar surface at this point. And what you see here is the X and Y origin in terms of the what you would normally think about in math when you're looking down at a piece of graph paper. Pay no attention to the bottom left corner indicators at the moment. I just want you to think of the horizontal X, the vertical Y. So we're going to go over here, and right now we're in two-dimensional plane. If you noticed, our feature tab has been cycled automatically over to sketch, and what we're going to do is we're going to click corner rectangle. You could either drop down the children menu, or you could just click the parent at the top, which by default should be corner rectangle, and you can visually check to see if you have two little squares in the corner of this rectangle. Your cursor will turn to a pencil. To target with this cursor, it's the tip of the pencil. And I'm not clicking or anything at the moment, but when I hover over the origin, you can see an orange circle. That means that if I click, I will snap to that point. That's consistent with all geometry here in SolidWorks and how that behaves, so look for these circles, which will indicate snapping points. So at this point, no pun intended, you are going to click and release. You're not going to click and drag. Most students have the habit of clicking and dragging, and that creates a set of compound behaviors that become confusing because you do too many things at once and you don't know what you're doing. So we're going to focus on just clicking and releasing and then doing additional steps. So we're going to click and release. And when you click and release at this point, I don't have my mouse down or anything like that. I'm just moving my mouse. You can see that my cursor is tied to the diagonal corner of this rectangle. You can place the corner any way you want. Obviously, try to stay in the upper right-hand quadrant. Let's consider this the XY positive. We don't want to be in this direction, or this direction traditionally for reasons we'll explain later in the future, but not for this video. So you're going to click and release again to create some sort of rectangular shape. It doesn't matter if it looks identical to mine, because at this point, this is where you and I, even though I don't even know who I'm speaking to yet, your shape is going to be the same as my shape once we regulate this with numbers using the Smart Dimension tool, which is right here. So I want you to click Smart Dimension, single click, and you're going to notice your cursor goes back to the arrow cursor with what it looks like dimension and leader lines with arrowheads. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick two perpendicular sides to create measurements. So if you notice when you hover your mouse over the geometry, when you go to the edge of the surface, you'll see that it's orange. When you click on the orange surface, remember we are clicking and releasing, your mouse will then be tied to the dimension number, the arrowheads, the leader lines, and the dimension lines. So at this point, it's asking you to place the number down where you think it would be best viewed by you. This would be a poor choice because the numbers are overlapping and it's going to be difficult to read. So you should pick somewhere off to the side, not in the part. That's going to be something that you're not going to want to do. You're going to try to avoid that in the future as well. And you're going to click and release, and you're going to drop that number. And when you drop the number, it prompts you for the actual number you want versus the actual number that it measured to at random when you drew it. So at this point, we're going to regulate this, I believe, to 5 inches. And we actually didn't talk about unit regulation at this point. So at this point, if you are not in inches, or you don't know you're in inches, if you just specify IN, we can ensure even if you have a metric standard selected, we can be in inches. So when you press enter, you should see 5.00. If you are in a metric equivalent, you will see the metric conversion of 5 inches to whatever metric unit you decide to be set to. It will auto-convert it to the default number value. So we're going to make this 5 inches as well. Remember, click and release. Click and release, 5, enter. And at this point, we have given this computer system, this CAD system, 2 dimensions of the 3 that we want. Remember, we're trying to get a cube here in this video. This is designed to be your first experience with SolidWorks, and we're going slow here. So we're going to stop at the cube. I can see that we're about 8 minutes in at this point. So we have 5 and 5 for our X and our Y per se. And over here, this is called the confirmation corner. We have a red X, and then we have a blue arrow. If you click the X, you're going to discard everything that you have created thus so far. And that's obviously an easy out if you made a mistake and you've kind of, it's almost like a rage quit per se, and you're going to lose all the information you've just set up. I don't recommend doing that. What I recommend doing, obviously, to move on to the next step, to get our 3rd dimension, SolidWorks remembers that we are still interested in doing a feature that we started this video with. If you click the blue arrow, SolidWorks will automatically rotate into the solid 3D view at this point. If you somehow missed a step or backed up a few steps or hit Control Z to undo something, you most likely won't see this and you'll just see a 2-dimensional sketch. I'll address that in a moment. But for those of you that are following this video with precision, at this point you can either grab this arrow, which I do not recommend unless this is something that you have a real need for. The best practice is to come over here to the properties of the Boss Extrude, and you're going to change this to 5 because we were trying to make a cube. Now if you look at the tabulator key or the tab key above the caps lock on the left side of the keyboard, and you press tab and zoom out, you will get a preview. So you can get used to pressing tab, and what it does is it gets your text cursor out of that field. It inputs that value, but it doesn't confirm that value, so you can preview it. If you press your mouse wheel in and drag your mouse, this is one of the few times we drag, you can orbit or rotate your view to inspect to see if what it is that is happening is what you intend. Obviously, if you're following, we have a cube. So at this point, you can either press enter on the keyboard, or you can click the green check here, or you can click the green check here. There's 3 options. They all result into the same action. When you do so, we have a cube. Let's regulate the way that we look at it at this point. So if you press spacebar, I have a lot of things running at this time. We're going to continue with this. And at this point, if you click any one of these corners, you are going to get a isometric view, if you want to think of it that way. We haven't talked about that just yet. If you take a look here, it's upside down, right? If you press space, you can click a different view. You can click a surface. What you can do is just rotate as well by pressing your mouse wheel. There is actually a window that is supposed to pop up that for some reason isn't, and I'll regulate that at different times. But if you have a shadow on, that kind of gives you an indication what the top is. If you don't have a shadow on, let's talk about that really quick. So we're going to go over to View. We're going to go to Display. And we want to make sure we're shaded with edges. That's first thing. And based on your video card in this classroom, I know that we have video cards that can enable this. We want to go down to Real View Graphics. We want to make sure perspective is not on. And then when you do so, you should be able to see shadows, reflectivity, edges that obviously will use shading as well. So you'll get a little bit more of a realistic view. If perspective is on, things are going to look a little bit distorted. And once again, that's a concept that we'll focus on another day. But shadows will give you a general idea of kind of where your top is, right? Because obviously your light source is above. So when I press spacebar, you have the kind of like the easy cube per se. You can click on the combination planar surfaces or the diagonal ones, and that'll give you an isometric view. And if you take a look, obviously X is this way now, Z is this way, and Y is up and down. But honestly, that's irrelevant at this point, so I'm fine with whatever way you want to interpret that. The video has pretty much served its purpose. Hopefully you've created a solid cube that is 5 inches by 5 inches by 5 inches. I just want to inspect this a little bit further over here in the model tree. When you drop this down, this is our boss extrude. If you click on it once, you will see the 3 dimensions, 5, 5, and 5. You can change those if you needed to. So you can update this model to suit your needs in the future if things need to change hypothetically. And then you can click on the sketch itself, and that will only highlight the 2 of 3 dimensions. Early on, I think it's important to know how to edit these 2 things, because let's say accidentally you put in 4.28. If you double click any one of these numbers, you can go ahead and change them in real time. Same thing if you click here. I can double click any one of these numbers. But if you want to edit the drawing per se, if you click on the icon of the drawing, a little pop-up appears here. You get a bunch of quick commands, and if you go to the upper left-hand corner, you can edit the sketch. Ignore the yellow that you see, but the 2-dimensional sketch is still there. And you could then go ahead and add additional geometry, trim it, cut it, put additional holes in it, or so forth. Don't do this, but this is just a demonstration. So for example, I added a circle, and I'm not even going to put dimensions in it, but if I added a circle into the middle of that sketch and then bounced out with the blue, I now have a hole represented in the part. Okay, so that's kind of the benefit of going back into the sketch. So then again, let's just fix this problem. I'm going to hit the space bar. I'm going to view the isometric view of it. I'm really not concerned about if I'm looking at the front, the back, or the side at this point. I just need to know that this is the top. There's our magic interrupting bell. I apologize for that. But we're going to go back into the sketch. We're going to click the icon of the sketch, not the word. If you click the word, what's going to happen is most students kind of end up clicking on this, and then all of a sudden it goes to renaming your sketch. So that's confusing. But to avoid all of that scenario, you're going to click the little icon of the sketch, upper left corner of the Edit Sketch button, and that's how you can get in. I'm just going to select that item and press Delete on the keyboard, not backspace. Backspace and Delete are 2 separate keys. And then I'm going to confirm in the confirmation corner that my changes are done, and I'm going to back to finishing the part. So at this point, you're going to do File, Save As, And I'm going to simulate what you're going to be doing in the network drive. I'm going to pick a location on the Conard share. I'm sorry, on my specific login. Your network drive is going to have your own last name associated here. You're going to hit a new folder. You're going to type in SolidWorks. You're going to go into your SolidWorks folder, and you can just call this Cube with a capital C, and you'll see why when we create the drawings. A lot of the times, as a convention, we put caps lock on, and we try to keep things all in uppercase, and we'll talk about that as well in the future. So hit save. You'll notice your part 1 will change up here to be cube, and we are done with this video. So this video went a little longer than I expected. However, it covered a lot of things that I think are important, and we're about 16 minutes in. So thanks for watching with me, and hopefully this was helpful.